want to talk about overdrives. I brought one just so you can see it, and I got my camera set back a little bit. So this is an LH overdrive from a late model MGB. Well, that's 68 through 80. And it's composed of just a couple of pieces. Its operation is more complex than just a couple of pieces, but we have here a main shaft, which I'll be happy to get rid of because it's so heavy. Well, sure, it just pulls right out. And I'm on my kitchen table. I don't have anybody else here to complain if I wreck it, but I don't want to. Here we go. All right. So here we have the annulus. And it's got all these gear teeth on the inside, 60 teeth on the inside. And then we have the planet gear assembly. So the three planet gears. I just changed the bearings. In my daughter's car, I just changed these bearings on a planet gear assembly. If I'd remembered that I had this one feels good. If I'd remembered I had this one, I would have done this. Those pieces were expensive and it was really difficult to do. I'd never done it before, but it is possible. So this planet assembly fits into the annulus. And then we have the sun gear. Here's the sun gear. It's called the sun gear because it fits in the middle of all the planet gears. So here's the sun gear here. And then a part that wears, this is the cone clutch. The official name is the sliding member. So on the inside, there's fabric, like a clutch disc. This runs in oil. And in direct drive, that's clamped down. Let's do this. In direct drive, it's clamped down tightly on the annulus, and this whole work spins all together when it's driven by the main shaft. So this whole work just spins too much stuff to hold here. Anyway, when you operate the overdrive, hydraulic pressure, technical phone call, but I'm gonna have to have him wait. Sorry, guys. It's a federal district judge from Atlanta, Georgia, who's got a TF. Anyway, when you operate the overdrive, this sliding member slides off the annulus and is stopped when it comes up and hits a brake ring. Once that stops, I don't think I can handle all this stuff at once, and I don't have a good thing, but when this stops, then the rear flange turns faster by a quarter of a turn per turn, turns faster than the main shaft. So that's the inside of the overdrive. The fifth gears that you get in modern gearboxes, the Japanese gearboxes and the Ford Sierra gearboxes, the Moss, I don't know if Moss is still selling those or not. They come out of England. Those have just got a fifth gear on. So it's you can count the teeth, you can see how it works. But overdrives are a little more complex because you really haven't got a place to sit on the inside and watch it operate. If you could, you'd see very clearly how it operates. You just need to imagine yourself sitting on the planet gear carrier. And if you can imagine that, then it all makes sense. Things that go wrong with the overdrive are electrical. That's real common to have a problem getting power down to the solenoid. Sometimes the solenoid goes bad, but not very often. Then sometimes, even though the solenoid and the electrics are working well, there's something wrong with the oil pressure. It creates a lot of oil pressure. There's an oil pump inside the overdrive. It only deflects about 1/4 of an inch. It's just a little tiny thing, bumps up and down as the main shaft is going around. But it creates 450 pounds of pressure. That's a lot. That's a lot of pressure. And there's an oil pressure relief valve in the overdrive to keep the pressure from getting too high. Sometimes little bits of stuff get caught in that, in the oil pressure relief valve, and keep it from relieving at the right pressure. You don't have enough pressure. Then another thing that happens is the inside of the overdrive unit gets dirty, and the oil pump, which is on a spring-loaded, it is spring-loaded, stops following the cam on the main shaft and just gets stuck down, so you don't get any oil pressure. So I've got a couple of videos up about how all this works and how to diagnose problems that you might encounter with the overdrive. But it's either electrical, and that's just a real quick check to make sure that that's working. You just need a test light. Sometimes you don't even need that. Sometimes you hold the gear lever off to the right side and the overdrive works, and then you know it's the third, fourth, or the later cars, just the fourth gear lockout switch. But a test light is really handy. You should not run the car in any gear up on jack stands for very long. It isn't good for the differential. But you can easily jack it up and get underneath there and just have someone turn the key on and kick the overdrive switch on and put it in fourth gear, third or fourth, depends on the year, and see if the electrics are working. So if the electrics are working, great. The overdrive still doesn't work, then it's a problem usually with the hydraulics. Although one just came up the other day, came through the line. Dave Brown is the NAMGBR tech guy, and he sent one out, and our vice president in Georgia was complaining that after he drives his overdrive, after he runs it for, I don't know, once it gets hot, 20 minutes or so, that going into reverse is impossible. And that's because the fabric, Paul Deershaw answered that from Sports Car Craftsman in Arvada, Colorado. Paul suggested it was let me grab this here, that it was the fabric on the inside of this cone clutch, which went bad, which got too thin, and it was starting to slip, especially under heat. I thought maybe it was a hydraulic problem. Maybe it's both. Once you get into the inside of the overdrive, it's just cleanliness, just making sure everything is all nice and clean. But that's quite a project. You got to take the engine and gearbox out of the car, and then you got to take the gearbox off the engine, and then you got to take the overdrive off the gearbox. And you have to do that when the speedometer gear fails. It's real frustrating. It's a big project. Changing the speedo gear, which is not inexpensive by itself when it's available. I don't know, sitting at $100 or something like that. But if you take it to a shop, probably $2,500 to get in and out of there to change it, along with all the other stuff that they would do at the same time, which is like changing the clutch and making sure the exhaust is all okay and making sure the mounts are all right. I just got done redoing an overdrive for my daughter's car. That's why I'm more familiar than not with the overdrive right now. And when I went to put the cross member back on underneath, I tried with Phil Ryan, and he and I both tried. And then I tried by myself. And I think between the combination of Phil and myself, I had about 3 hours into it. Couldn't get the fourth bolt in, no way. I was down underneath, just swearing up a storm. Very often, cursing heavily helps. It didn't help here, except that my daughter got frustrated and listening to me complain. And she said, "What do you need done?" And I said, "Well, I need this last bolt this 5/16 18 coarse thread bolt screwed into the gearbox. And she said, well, here, I'll do it. Well, you're a girl. She did it in about 2 minutes because her fingers are about as big around as a pencil, and mine were just too big. So there's inside problems with the overdrive, and there's outside problems with the overdrive, even including getting that cross member on. So anyway, that's my comments about overdrive. It's nice. Overdrives are nice. I refer to them as offering POM, peace of mind. When you kick your MGB at 70, 75 miles an hour into overdrive, the engine drivetrain noise falls by about half. It's really dramatic. I got into an argument with a guy in Texas one time about whether it was financially worthwhile to add overdrive because he thought he was going to get better mileage. And I said, well, you're still going at 60 miles an hour, so you're still pushing the same amount of air out of the way. Now the engine's going at less of a speed, and that certainly takes a certain amount of energy to run that, but it takes a certain amount of energy to run the overdrive. Anyway, he finally allowed that he drove like 200 miles a day. Well, okay, at that kind of use of the overdrive, maybe it's financially worthwhile, but mainly it's just POM, peace of mind. Everybody wants overdrive. It's so nice to have. Those Japanese gearboxes are really, really nice too, those 5 speeds. That's a really nice conversion to do. If you can stomach going away from original. So how far away from original do you want to get? You put in electronic ignition, that's not original. So anyway, those are my comments for tonight. So I'm going to start on my chat section over here, and I've got everybody on mute. I'm going to hit mute.
John?
Yes.
Since you're talking about the overdrive with my MG, I do have that problem of not being able to reverse.
And how long does it take until you can get it back into reverse? Is it like 30 seconds after you just sit and wait, or is it?
I've noticed that after we go on, a group trip, you get to your restaurant or wherever, and I can't get the dang thing out. So we go in and eat. When I come back out, it's working. I don't know. But my first question is it a problem to use it and expect that I can't reverse until it cools down?
No, it's just frustrating. That's all.
Okay, then I will do that test. Let's assume that it takes an hour or 2 hours. What are you trying to lead to?
Then it's cool down, and that means that the cone clutch needs replacement. This is on your MGC?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, what a project. That's a heavy power plant. If on the other hand, you wait 30 seconds or a minute and it starts to work, then it has to do with oil pressure. The oil pressure is staying in the system, and this cone clutch hasn't clamped all the way back down onto the annulus, and it's floating here in the middle. So unless this is clamped to the annulus, you cannot back up. So it might be, if you can do it within a minute, then the oil pressure is bleeding off and now it works. But if it takes longer, then maybe it's the cone clutch.
Okay, either way though, it's a big fix.
Not if it's the oil pressure, because then you can go at the overdrive from the outside. And since you always do the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first, you do that anyway, which is to drop out the solenoid, drop out the oil pressure relief valve, and if you're bold, take the cover off the bottom and wait a day for it to drip. No point working with oil dripping in your face. And then take the oil pump out and just clean everything. Take a can of carburetor cleaner and blow it through all the holes that you can find, and compressed air, and blow through and clean. That's the
I haven't been under there, so I don't know where this pump is.
Okay.
These parts are, but I'll do the test and go from there. And I'll call you if I got trouble.
Okay, no, all right, thanks a lot.
Expect a call.
John, I had the same problem. I put an overdrive in my car back when the speed limit went up to 65. And I put what was supposed to be a rebuild, and I couldn't take it out of overdrive. I couldn't back up. I had to wait, and I took it down to Dave Mack when he was still alive, and he drained it and checked it all out. He said he said, believe it or not, it's got to be broken in. So we were going on vacation. I drove it to Colorado. By the time I got to Colorado, it was fine. That was several 100,000 miles ago, and it's been working great ever since. But he said, just drive it, break it in, and that may do the trick.
But that was because it was stuck in overdrive, right?
Yes, and I couldn't back it up.
That's this cone clutch when it comes forward in the car. The outside ring here snaps again, or is pulled real tightly against the brake ring. And yes, we've seen that before. And you go underneath the car with a hammer and you go tunk on the bottom of the whole overdrive unit, and you can hear it go ping, and then it works just great. Or sometimes you can put the car in reverse and just kind of ease it a little bit, and then it pops loose. But what Skip's talking about is freewheeling
Yes.
in reverse. So
That's what I was gonna say. It'll freewheel on overrun. If that inner lining is gone,
Yes.
you'll lose reverse, but it'll also freewheel on overrun, which is a strange feeling.
yes, so that means that you're driving down the expressway, you're doing 70 miles an hour, you're in overdrive, you take your foot off the gas and you get this funny sensation, and you look at the tachometer and the tach says 1800 RPM as it's slowly falling on the, and yet you're still doing 70. So the rear wheels have not slowed down the engine. The engine is separate from the rear end, only because the rear end is going faster than the engine. And that's when that fabric has failed. Yes.
The only way that occurs is if the sprag is busted. It will never coast if the sprag is intact. That's why you're in trouble if you try to back up.
The rear axle, the drive shaft can always go faster than the engine. It can't go slower. That's why you can't back up.
Right, it's jammed. You're fighting yourself. But but the way the sprag works on coast, it'll always drive the engine if the sprag's intact.
So if you go to accelerate, the sprag clutch will catch, and then off you go again. But you got to bring your RPM back up. So
another way the unit will fail to disengage or give you a solid reverse to work with is a plug port in the valve lifter. That little rod which has the ball sitting on the seat, and you have to lift the ball to engage the overdrive, the solenoid lever.
in the solenoid, yeah.
Well, in the case, if the solenoid operates the lever and lifts the rod, which lifts the ball.
Okay. I'm sorry. You're dealing with a three synchro unit. Okay. All right.
I'm dealing with an A-type overdrive.
Right.
And if that vent hole in the bottom of the top chamber of that lifter rod is clogged, you'll have to bleed down the entire accelerator, accumulator volume of oil before the thing will re-engage for reverse. That's a real easy fix. Take that little plug out the top, pick out the ball with the magnet, and pick out the rod with a pick, and blow out that port.
Well, this is only easy on a big Healy where you can take the tunnel out. On an MGB, you can't get to it, can you?
Or a TR4, yeah, a TR3.
Okay, all right. Yeah, there's an advantage to being able to take that whole tunnel out of the way and look right at it and service it. The early workshop manual, and then it was continued, I think, and it's incorrect, says that if you put your ear on the gear shift knob and operate overdrive, you can hear a very distinct, clink. But that's not true on the LH from 1968 through 1980. There's no noise on those. They are silent. So it's just the earlier ones that make the click. So that's not a valid test on the 68 through 80s, on the LH overdrives.
John,
Tony,
when I put my my 3 synchro overdrive in to get those bolts into the cross member, I use this. This is a flexible piece
okay.
with this piece here with an angle adjustable thing. Took a little time, but I was able to finagle it.
You got those thin girls too. You could have asked them to get underneath there. They would have done
I
it in
know,
an
I
instant.
usually do, and I didn't think of that, but thanks. Next time Leanne will do it.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Do we have any more comments, any other questions or before we go on about the overdrives?
John, what about, is there any routine maintenance you should do to prevent all this? My overdrive's working great, knock on wood. It probably just fell apart, but what does one do? Use it a lot?
There's only 2 things you can do, and that is replace the oil from time to time. How often? I don't know, every 12,000 miles, every 5 years. And then there is a filter on the bottom of the LH overdrive, about that big, half the size of a postcard, 2/3 the size of a postcard. And when you do all that, you should take that filter screen out. And then underneath the filter screen are magnets. They're glued to the aluminum case. And those magnets always have just the finest bits of metal on them. Metal from all kinds of, metal from your reverse gears, metal from anywhere in the gearbox. It just happens to get caught down there rather than get sucked up into the overdrive. So there's a really good filter system there.
Well, that's a 72, so I assume it's the LH.
Yes, sir.
Is the transmission oil and the overdrive oil all the same oil?
It's
Is
all
it a
common.
shared?
It's common, yeah. And the workshop manual says use 20W50, but John Esposito at Quantum Mechanics says absolutely use 30 weight non-detergent. So somewhere between those two, not ATF, not 90 weight, You don't have to put high zinc oil in your gearbox, just a waste of money. But
Just cheap old 30 weight oil.
just 30 weight oil, non-detergent. Yes, sir.
I recommend the detergent oils and the multi-grade. You'll have a very sluggish overdrive with the straight weight when it's cold. And you won't have the detergent dispersant ability to carry those fines down to that magnet the way they should if you use a non-detergent.
I only bring that up because Esposito is so adamant about it. So, yeah,
John?
I've always used engine oil. Oh, just 2050, just always.
John, I have a subjective question.
Yes.
Hi, this is Walter. I have a LH that I picked up recently, and I've ran it on a power drill to verify that the overdrive was working. And I've never run one on the ground. And I can hear a bit of bearing and gear noise. Is there any way you can quantify how much I should be hearing?
No, but there's always a lot of noise out of the, you can hear the overdrive kick in because it's got a different swish to it.
I'm more referring to the input bearing and the cluster bearings.
There's always, this is an all synchro box, right?
I'm sorry?
This is an all synchro box, 68 through 80. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always some noise. There's always some wobble in the first motion shaft, but just tiny. Just tiny, and you can jiggle it up and down. Those units are really durable. I was stunned when I dropped my daughter's all synchro gearbox apart and found, or the overdrive that we purchased to put into it. front caged bearing on the leg gear, it was completely disassembled and little bits of stuff floating around in there. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Was it a black label or a blue label?
Blue label?
Yeah, the blue ones don't hold up as well as the black.
It's the same leg gear. It's the same.
I know. They were having a problem with a washer on the main shaft.
Well, in the overdrive, yes, absolutely. When this sun gear is engaged, I mean, it's got bevel teeth, so the teeth want to slip out of gear rather than carry the motion. When this comes into play, this is slammed forward, and there's a washer.
Yeah.
In the gear case, up through 77 through 80, there is an insufficiently thick washer in there. I make a replacement washer. So when you take that filter screen off, it's not uncommon to find that broken thrust washer line in there.
Yeah. All right. I really appreciate the input. When's your daughter coming out to California?
She's there. She already went back. She came back here for 6 weeks, so we get the car done, and we got the car almost done. So I'm still. That's why I don't have a list of all the donors, because I've been working on the car rather than doing all the other stuff that I usually do. So anyway, she's in LA, and I'll be out there in a couple of weeks. So I don't know exactly when, but I'll let everybody know when I do go out there.
I'm in the middle of starting up a mobile British car repair for the Los Angeles area. So I'll be in touch.
Okay, all right. Contact me anytime, absolutely.
Wish me luck. How do I get your contact information?
On my website, universitymotorsltd.com.
All right.
Probably my phone number's on there and everything, so.
All right, John. Thank you.
Okay, good
Hey,
luck.
Walter.
Hey, John.
Walter, if you get your shop up and running, send me your contact information. I'll put it on my shops list and drop in to see you.
I don't know where to put it.
Okay, so that was Barney Gaylord talking.
Oh, Barney, I'll contact you. Yes.
And that's mgaguru.com. Any MGA question and early MGBs and any MG questions, but Barney's got a wonderful site, 4,000 pages of stuff.
Yes, he's saved my life already in the past.
Okay, all right.
And we've chatted. Thank you.
John, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have two questions about overdrives.
Yes.
Okay, it's an early 3-synchro box D-type overdrive. Functions very well, has two things. One is that I changed the oil and cleaned everything up as I could when I changed the oil. And in the remains, in the discarded oil, there was the remains of a thin, warpy washer, almost like a shim, probably the size of $0.25 or $0.50, what was left of it. What is that, and is it serious? Where'd that come from? I assume it came out of the overdrive.
There are shims that are that big around that sit inside the front cover. And they've got they're about as wide as a pencil, but circular, that hold the front bearing from spinning.
I'm familiar with those. This was smaller than that. This was probably the size of a quarter.
There's nothing in the main gearbox.
Right, that's what I think. Yeah. Could it be?
I had a guy call me from France. And he and his buddy, who was English, this other guy's French, and he'd spent two years in Arkansas. I don't know if he was teaching school or working for an oil company or what. So he's got this obviously heavy French accent, but down inside the English language is an Arkansas accent. So it's real fun to talk to him. Anyway, he had some shims about that big out of his MGA engine. And he said they were in the sump.
Wow.
They did not come out of your engine. I mean, he said, well, they're in the sump. I said, why? Did somebody put them in there for fun? It's like,
well, here's the other half of it. When you have the overdrive engaged and you're going down a hill and you lift your foot off the throttle and just cruise on down, the overdrive whines. Kind of like a mild differential whine, but it is the overdrive. If you take it out of overdrive, there is no whine. It's only when it's engaged. Could that be connected to this washer?
There isn't, I just can't, there isn't a water. I mean, the forces inside that gearbox are just so heavy that there's no thin washer in there.
Yeah.
It get torn up. So I don't know, but obviously there's something going on inside the gearbox. And you're sure you've done it in overdrive and not in overdrive, so you know for sure that it's a gearbox noise.
This has been going on for years, and the thing works fine, and I drive it. I put 30,000 miles on it, but it's always whined on overrun when you take your foot off the gas.
Boy, I go right for the differential, but you've already got that, you've already sorted that out, so.
I'd
Yeah,
go for rust washers on the Sun gear.
That's what yeah.
What about the annulus being out of sync with the sun gears, out of phase?
Okay, so here is a 3-synchro. Here's a 3-synchro planet assembly with a good planet gear in it. You see how this guy is junk, and this one's beat up real badly. But on this one, there is a washer which fits. I don't know if you can see it way up in the top here. So that it must be that on the 3-synchro, there's something to reduce the end float too. But that would not come out as a complete piece. It just comes out.
It was pieces, just pieces. It was not a complete piece.
Well, maybe Bob's got it. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think he might. Yeah.
Because you got noise in overdrive and you got this piece. So hey,
Well, next time I have it apart, I'll get that all rebuilt.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, John. Oh,
Mike.
hi. I typed something in the chat, but it's about overdrives, but I can ask you this while you're on the subject. I have an overdrive box, which I got back in the late 70s. This was back in England. It came out of a scrap car. And it turns out it was an early one, 62 to 64, because it had the small, first motion shaft. It had the overdrive on it. Took it, look inside, and turns out it's a close ratio box. Whether it's any value to anybody, I don't know. The thing's out of the car at the moment.
So Mike Palin, if you want to put your contact information in chat, maybe Mr. Keg will buy it from you because eventually he's going to need the overdrive. But close ratio gears, those sound cool, but they're not very handy for street driving.
No, I know. Well, it came out. We brought it out to the States in '85 up in Boston. It lasted 2 years, and it's been towed around ever since. It's sat in my garage at the moment, sadly. But it's where we came to your engine rebuild class in Grand Rapids a few years ago, but didn't get anything done with the engine. The other thing about the gearbox, I noticed in the Moss catalog there, the gear lever on the gearbox is a long straight thing. And I noticed in the Moss catalog, they say the standard box and the overdrive box have a different gear lever. Does that mean the top turret and things are all different?
That means that the position of the remote control is different. And so that the gear lever sits in about the same place as in relationship to your body. The normal gearbox has a snake in the gear lever, and the overdrive is just straight up. That is not the case in an all synchro box. The same gear lever in both of those. But yes, and that has to do with the length. And there's also a drive shaft length change when in that 3-synchro box. There isn't one in the all synchro box. I mean, there is, but it's only 1/4 of an inch or something. So you can use the old drive shaft. from a straight box with when you switch over to an LH 68 through 80.
Yeah, I actually purchased it from the local scrapyard here in Reading. Well, it was all for GB engine, so it'll be 65, which would match up to the car. And I'm tempted to put that in and not use the overdrive box, actually, now. Don't have many years left to play with it, but.
Yeah, you got to make up your mind pretty soon.
I know, yeah, tell me about it, yeah. Yeah, okay. All right,
Well,
thanks, Don.
You're welcome. One thing that came up a little bit earlier was a blue label or a black label gearbox. And rather than call them that, I call them top fill, which are the black ones, or side fill, which are the blue ones. So a side fill gearbox is heaven. Oh my gosh, you don't have to pull that friggin' dipstick out and spill oil all over the passenger compartment when you fill up the gearbox. And I hope the guy got a $50,000 bonus for suggesting that. It's so handy for us mechanics. Anyway, 74 through 80, they commonized the speedometer to run at 1,000 turns per mile. Prior to that, 68 through 74, the speedo gear was 1,280 turns per mile. So the gearboxes, while the gearboxes are identical, the drive, the speedo drive in the back changes, and it changes in the overdrive unit also. Because those gears are plastic, if the speedo binds up, the speedo cable binds up, you can strip those gears. It's really frustrating. You got to take the whole friggin' thing apart just to change that driving gear. You can change the driven gear, just pull it out, put another one in. But if the gear on the main shaft, which sits right here between the annulus, that speedo gear sits right there. If that thing's toast, it's so frustrating to have to change it. So it doesn't matter which gearbox you get. I prefer the side fills. I mean, oh my gosh. But that means that you either have to change the gears inside the overdrive or change the speedometer. So the speedos, 74.5 through 76, you can put a 1280 into the later car. Works just fine. You can find those on eBay all the time. But you want to make sure that you get the correct one. It's either clocked at 1,000 or at 1280. So the earlier gearboxes changed. They had a couple different speedo drive ratios, and they even changed it in 65, I think, when they went from bias ply to radial tires. The speedo changes, and then they also had an overdrive speedo. So that prior to 68, there's a jumble of different possibilities. But after 68, you only have a 1280 or a 1,000 speedo. That's just an aside. I just thought of that just to mention it.
The third option, of course, for the car is I have a Type 9 Ford box, which was going to go in my MGA and never has. So I have a bell housing for 1,500. So I attempted to get another bell housing from the guy in the UK and stick that in the B, maybe, I got too many things to think about, I toss a coin, I think, see what to do.
Well, there's always tomorrow.
That's right. Thanks, Don.
Hey, John, quick question.
Yes, Eric.
So I've got my, I just bought an overdrive to put in my car, and I got it shipped from the UK. And to make shipping less expensive, they split it off the actual transmission, but I got both pieces.
Okay.
And I bought all the stuff to refurbish it, not refurbish it, but just do the servicing, like the screens and the O-rings and all that stuff that you show in your video. But you're working underneath the car with everything nicely overhead and is going to fall into your hands. Is there any concerns on the bench with it in a different attitude that stuff will fall into the overdrive rather than fall nicely to hand?
You can work on under the bench without any problem at all. You can make a case that it's almost easier to do it up there. Well, you can see it and you're not lying on your back or some trouble light, shining in your eyes. The only problem comes when you go to fit the overdrive onto the gearbox. That's the issue. So you put the gear, to do this, I've got a video up.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it really is true. It either takes 7 seconds or half an hour. And it all has to do with this main shaft, and that you can see the splines.
Right.
And I always put a male spline at 12 o'clock. And then the speedo gear, the oil pump cam, which lies up here, it sounds tacky, but I grind just a little radius on it, so the oil pump will get over it more easily and put a lot of grease on it.
Right.
And then the sprag clutch, which came up earlier in conversation, you can reach down into the gearbox with a screwdriver and turn that sprag clutch anti-clockwise until it lines up perfectly with these splines.
Right, yeah.
The planet carrier, and then drop it on. So, but it just always buy a couple of gaskets, because after you try it, like, I don't know, 6 times, you've torn up the gaskets, it's just time to take a break and start over again.
Sure. And the only other thing, so in shipping, the ball bearing that's in where the cam drive is seems to have fallen out. So I bought some new ball bearings to put in there. Just put them in with grease so they stick, and then.
Yeah, just stick it in with grease. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
That's, I think, what's that, about a 730 seconds or something, that ball.
Yeah, I didn't measure it. I just expected they sent me the right one. So.
Okey doke.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I hope I have as much success as you had in your video, because that just fell on by comparison.
I just did my daughter's, and I told my daughter, because it doesn't matter how much experience you've got, it has to do with that sprag clutch, and it just has to, I don't know, maybe it has to do with the position of the moon, who knows? But I told my daughter, I said, this is either going to take 7 seconds or half an hour, and I put it on and tried it. The third sort of bump that I tried, it just went right on. I was so happy.
Well, maybe because you said it was going to take so long that you've now done the anti-jinx, and it's always going to work perfectly, right?
Maybe.
Anyways, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
This is Barney.
Oh, Barney.
I got a couple of questions. One of them is on the speedometer drive gear in the back of the overdrive, the plastic gear.
Yes.
Just rebuilt an overdrive a couple of weeks ago. That plastic gear was melted like candle wax. What the hell would make it get that hot?
Lack of oil. Oh, I mean, you know, or the car was parked in someone's driveway, and they had a fire in a bunch of leaves underneath, and it got hot. I don't know, Barney. It beats me. I've seen them, you know, scooped out, you know, because they've run the pinion gear. The pinion gear is frozen and has crapped up all those teeth. Of all the gears to make out of metal, please, but they don't. So I don't know.
Oh, the other question is about the front bearing shims.
Yes.
I've done a bunch of gearbox, and I always shim those things to a clearance of about 0 to 0.02 of an inch. The idea is to take all the inflow out of the front bearing, but not to interfere with the gasket. Now, a few minutes ago, you said that's supposed to keep the bearing race from rotating. Don't think so. It's a little clearance when you get it put together, unless you can compress the gasket that much.
I've taken them apart where you can see that the outer race is spun in the case. So, however, it's the case.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those where the shims were smashed in black, like they were slipping. The bearing race was spinning or something. But I don't think you can set them tight enough to actually capture that bearing race. Otherwise, you interfere with the gasket sealing.
What I do there on the front cover, I don't have one here to show you, but on the front cover, you've got the area with the bearing race, and I take a prick punch and put about 100 little pricks all around there, so that when you put it back together, those there's an interference fit with that front race, and coupled with the shims, which you've held in place with grease, all tend to hold the thing in there pretty snugly. So it was always my impression that those were to keep, only because I saw the effects of them spinning, and you see them balled up down there on the bottom by the lay shaft.
Yeah, but it really is for end float. So you don't have that lost motion as it screws in and out of the lay shaft.
Okay. Okie doke. So now we're going to go now. The way this works, I put everybody on mute. I'm going to mute everybody right now. It's not because I don't like you, but I don't want the background noise. And we're going to start hitting some of the questions here. A few of our pub night members are discussing the necessity of an oil cooler on an MG. What's my opinion? My opinion is you don't need it. It's cool. It's nice to have. It's cool. Get it? It's cool. It's nice to have, but it's not necessary. The earlier engines create a lot more internal heat than the later engines. There's a dramatic evolution in that 18V engine. So is it just that the lighter weight rods, the lighter weight cam followers, the single chain, the lighter springs on the cylinder head? Is that why they went away from the oil cooler? From 74 onwards for the American spec cars, or is it cost, or is it both? But those late model engines run and run and run without the oil cooler. They're cool, they're neat, they're fancy, but I don't think they're critical. But someone must have thought so, because that's a pretty expensive part, even though it was an option. Just all the American cars came through with oil coolers. That's not true with all the MGs that are made for all the different markets. Some didn't come with heaters, but the American ones always came with oil coolers. 62 through 74, and then 74 and a half, they started to drop those off. So I don't think you need it, but I could be wrong. Oil's a whole lot better than it used to be. So,
Well, just Barney, I tend to agree with you, John, but I've been running an oil cooler for 30 years. But then again, I have some ulterior motives,
Barney puts a lot of miles on his car. I've got an oil cooler on my 62 MGA, absolutely. Makes more sense. It's plumbed from the bottom side, so you don't get a lot of silt build up in the bottom of the oil cooler. It purges itself while it runs. My daughter's 73 BGT that I'm just getting done with absolutely has got an oil cooler because it came with one, and I'm sort of Mr. Original, sort of. But if it was up to buying a new one with new hoses that are either too short or too long or blow apart, you don't need it. So.
Well, I'm fairly often towing my 600-pound trailer up the hills and the mountains. Third year of the truck laid flat to the floor for half an hour,
Okay, all right. That's a lot of extra heat being generated there. So yes.
It's like racing for half an hour at a time, full throttle up the hill.
Okay, now Simon Dix. Simon, thank you very kindly. Simon has provided me with a background that I use sometimes from St. Louis. And let me find the background. Here we go. Simon provided me with this wonderful background, but usually when I'm describing it or moving my hand, since I don't yet have a green screen, I haven't been using it lately, but Simon's weighed in here to say that there are too many variables in tablets and computer setups to give one set, for me, to give one set of instructions on how to use, the bottom and top ribbons and so forth. So, all right, from Barry, Norm Ewing, I don't know if this is from Barry or from Norm. I mentioned to my brother about Born, and turns out they raced together Norm, and Norm has pictures of my brother. It's a really small world. Barry, who's Barry here? Who put that in? It's 701 about Norm Ewing. Barry, are you still on? So this has to do with Norm Ewing, who's the head of the MG Kart Club in South Africa for years. Norm would be on tonight, but guess what? There's no power on tonight in Johannesburg, so he can't come on. And Simon Dix has weighed in again and said an alternative to Zoom is Microsoft Teams. If you'd like to discuss possibilities, let me know. Simon is the expert in all this kind of stuff. But I'm an old dog and this is all new tricks, and I got this trick pretty well under control. So I think I'll stay with Zoom for right now. Okay, Judd, everyone. Judd, I saw you log on before. Yep, thank you. How do you test a water pump? I still have a bit of overheating issue with my 53 TD, and that's in 80-degree weather on a steep climb. The temp gauge, easy for me to say. The temp gauge climbs right up to boiling. I don't think the pump is adequately circulating coolant. So the pumps don't go bad. That said, I can tell you that I have 2 or 3 only after 50 years of collecting really nice examples of weird stuff, where the impeller has either spun free or broken free or reduced diameter or something, so that the pump itself is the problem. More likely than not, on the T-type, it's your overall timing, unless you've got that absolutely set at 32 before at full mechanical advance. And a car that's not timed correctly is going to put out more heat than power to the flywheel, and that's almost always the same problem. On the other hand, the X bags don't cool very well. You know, the water pump blows the water, draws the water off the bottom of the radiator, blows it into a channel which runs down underneath the exhaust manifold and dumps it out up at the back of the head. Then from there, it circulates all the way forward again, and goes into the top of the radiator and gets drawn out the bottom by the water pump. So there's all kinds of stuff in that X-Bag engine that can get real crappy on the inside. It's almost impossible to clean it. You can always put some kind of caustic soda in it, radiator cleaner, block cleaner in it, and run it for a little while, and open up the drain cock on the side of the block, and open up the drain cock on the bottom of the radiator, purge it all out, and then use 50/50 glycol antifreeze afterwards.
I had the whole thing out, as we've talked on previous meetings, and the innards of the block are as clean as you can get them. The radiator is clean and redone. Maybe it's just normal. I mean, this car in 70 degree weather, I can drive it all day without it overheating. But as soon as I hit 80 out ambient and put a load on it, it just shoots up. And I just, maybe I'm wrong about the water pump, but I just thought maybe it wasn't pushing the water through it. Bob's my club member, and he's sitting here saying, Judge, I've told you 3 times what the answer is. I just put a super duper electronic ignition on it. I think the timing's right, but who knows? And so I just thought I'd ask if there's anything. Can you just look in the radiator and see? I mean, is the water pump working?
On a normal MG, I get to mute everybody. I get some background noise. I don't mean to cut you off. You can unmute yourself again, Judd. On a normal MG, what's abnormal about a T-type? You can put the back of your hand on the radiator. You can feel it. You can feel it. And if you got a stone cold vertical section in the radiator, you know that the water is not circulating through those rods. And the fins have gone cold as a result. Can't do that on a T-type, but with, wait just a second.
Bob, I'll talk to you offline.
Since I don't use this at the shop much, You know, it's, you know,
I've got one, just bought one.
Yeah, okay, well, you can shoot through the slats and the radiator, and you're just looking, obviously there should be a difference between high, which is hotter, and low, but there should be no difference side to side, indicating that the radiator is plugged up in some way.
All right, I'll check on that. Thank you.
Go for that timing, Judd, because that's really critical. That's just as critical as can be.
Is it gonna overheat either way, or is it only gonna overheat if it's say too
retarded?
much?
I know if it's retarded, it overheats. And Barney will correct me on this probably. And if it's too advanced, the inside of the cylinder head gets too hot. So in both cases, you know, you're releasing heat in energy into the wrong place.
Okay.
But 32 degrees. Now, if you got a 40152 original distributor in your TD and you static time it at 0, that 40152 has got a 16-degree advance on it. So that's double 16 is 32. You should be exactly where you should be. But if you want to make absolutely sure, check it. You got to either use a dial back timing light, or you can make a new mark to the right as you're facing it, facing the front pulley. Make a new mark at exactly 1 inch. It's 1.004. Well, the new mark you're going to make is wider than 0.004 inches, but make it 1 inch to the right of the existing timing mark, and put your normal everyday timing light on that and rev it up as fast as you need to make sure that the timing is moved all the way and no longer advances. Maximum advance. It's when the weights have spun all the way out. Does that happen at 2,000 RPM or 4,000 RPM? Should happen at 4,000, but that distributor is pretty old. So just make sure that when it hits full mechanical advance, that you're at that new timing mark, which is 1 inch to the right of the original one.
I did that, but then I took a drive up through the mountains and one of the springs came loose, threw the weight out and destroyed the entire innards of the distributor. And Jeff in advance threw up his hands and said, there's not enough distributor here left to rebuild. So I bought a fancy dancy electronic one. But I think I can still set up with the timing light and see where it's.
Absolutely, you have to, because the fancy dancy electronic one, geez, I don't want to impinge on any certain area, but the quality of some of those new parts, especially something like this, isn't as good as the original stuff was when it was new. And timing is critical.
Okay.
So 32 is the number you're after.
I'll check it again. Thank you.
Okay, Judd.
We beat that to death, but thank you every time.
Yep, Bob.
Sort of on that question of Judd's, have you had any experience with high ambient overheating and the removal of thermostats?
Well, the T-Type's got this weird thermostat originally. Since Judd, you're down south someplace, aren't you?
Right, South Carolina, it's warm.
So you probably don't even have a thermostat in your car.
Not at the moment. I'm thinking about putting it back in, but like Bob said, I've got the Tom Lang's, rebuilt different kind of thing that I can use a standard standard thermostat in it. But right now I don't have it installed. And that didn't seem to really make any difference. It just means it's slow to warm up.
You do have the bypass hose. That's
I do.
Good grief, 7/8 of an inch in diameter. So even at the elbow where it goes into the thermostat housing, it's 1/2 inch in diameter. So if you get a lot of water going from the head back into the water pump without going through the radiator,
So maybe I should try blocking that bypass.
Well, maybe not blocking it off completely, but I have seen guys make a little elliptical plate that fits behind that elbow, and you put a 1/4 inch hole in it. That's all.
Okay.
Instead of 1/2 inch. So that all the water coming out of the engine into the top of the radiator, in fact, goes into the top of the radiator rather than short circuiting.
Okay, that's worth a shot. Easy.
Can I ask a question about this, John?
Yeah.
He said mountains, and I'm thinking if he's climbing, if he climbs high, the air gets thinner, and therefore the mixture in the carb would change, and that could possibly cause overheating.
Well, it isn't. It'll overheat it at all altitudes. I run from 800 feet above sea level to 4,000 at a max, and usually not much more than 3,000. So we're not talking about Rocky Mountains here. We're talking about eastern 3,000, 3,500 foot mountains. But a 7% grade going up to Saluda, 7% grade's a pretty good grade. And I'm hitting it real hard. I mean, I'm holding 50 miles an hour all the way up that thing.
And it could be if you're not, if the timing is not correct, because the advance, everybody talks about an advanced curve. There is no curve. The timing doesn't curve. It's two intersecting straight lines. Anyway, if the timing is not correct, which it very well isn't correct at the right time, then it may be that it's too retarded or too advanced at 50 miles an hour. I don't know if your distributor is fully advanced at 50 miles an hour or not. I would think so, but
it's about 3,200 RPM. Yeah.
The original
the car is driving like it's incredibly good. The torque, the pull, the ability to accelerate is wonderful. I just can't get rid of the heat.
Okay, but what difference does it make if it goes up to 100, except driving you crazy? Does it start to run bad?
Maybe you're right. I mean, except for blowing, I've had it go up into the oil pressure.
All MGA owners have had that happen. Barney has that happen when he's driving every day, you know?
So wait a minute, if it ain't a problem, I ain't worried about it then. Is that what you're saying?
I wish we'd cut to the chase earlier, but yes.
Well, I have to add some water every once in a while if I boil it.
You don't, it's not a pressurized system in the version that Judd's got. So it just dumps the water out when it gets up to that. So it is a problem.
If it's boiling, in a T-type, you can hear, when you shut that thing off, it goes tum, 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 but if it isn't causing the problem running and it's only an occasional thing and you carry some extra water, hey, it's the engine isn't going to melt until you get a lot hotter than 100 centigrade. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to do parades, that's for sure.
No, parade use is, just a comment about parade use. We've got through 3 questions. I don't know how many questions there are. We got through 3 or 4 questions so far, and it's already 8:14. We got 158 people online. Thank you very much. And anyway, parade use, if you're really keen on a parade use, which our cars are not built for, open up the valve lash to 30 or 40 thousandths. Now the engine will tick over at 300 RPM because you're only moving every, just so often. And when you get done with the parade, then you can pull off someplace and tighten the valves back up to 15. But that's a cheap trick. That'll at least it cuts the idle speed way down. And if the idle speed is cut down, then you're not making anywhere nearly as much heat out of that engine. But those fans are going to use an incorrect word. The T-type fans aren't very good either. And I've seen a lot of people use that like 1973 MGB cooling fan, yellow 5-blade plastic thing. Like, what's that doing on your TD? It's not original, no, but it makes it cool. Or you can put an electric fan, although my gut is that the synchronous motor that runs the electric cooling fan on your MG is better used on a turntable, listening to some old LPs. But anything you can parade use is a really difficult place. So anyway, okay, we've hit this pretty heavily. Let's see, Jim Holliday weighs in from London, Ontario, and says, John, what's your recommendation for engaging and disengaging the overdrive when driving? I don't use the clutch. Some people use the clutch. If you use the clutch, is it better? Maybe it chews up your regular clutch more quickly. If usually going into overdrive, there's just a little sort of, as it comes up. Coming out of overdrive, if the shims on the oil pressure relief valve are wrong, it can be really harsh. And if that's over and over and over, a real harsh disengagement, you can make a case for using the clutch, but offhand, I never do. So, okay, Peter, you can unmute yourself. What's the best way to remove the rear seal of the overdrive while it's still mounted in the car?
Yeah, I was having problems going in there, and I started to remove it, and it just wouldn't budge. Is there any special way just to pull that sucker out?
No, it's a crude. There are seal pullers that have backward forks on them, and you can get them up around in there. But once you pull the flange off, the seal's right there, and it's just a bugger. But if you can get a puller with hooks that go on the inside, and again, I don't know if this is something. I just bought a slide hammer from someplace like Harbor Freight, and I don't know why I did. Nothing fit. But that's okay. The only way that I can think of, other than using a pry bar, which is I can't get away from my camera far enough. But I've got some pry bars that are like really huge, and it's just a crude, job to pry that thing out of there. So
I just didn't want to take a BFH to it or anything like that. So,
but you're already in, right? You've got to change it now. So,
okay.
I can't think. I don't think going in there with a hacksaw and trying to cut the outside circumference makes any sense, because it's an aluminum housing, and you're going to end up cutting the aluminum. You're going to get crap inside that rear bearing. So no, I don't know. I know there is a tool. One of the guys in the trade has got a tool that he can pull the rear bearing out of the overdrive and change the driving gear on the overdrive. But it's like a $400 tool, but it's got these little fingers, and it'll pull that rear bearing out. It's for a BMW or something. Anyway, I'm sure there's a tool that you can find to pull that seal. But it's so remote. You can make a case, since you have the drive shaft off, and loosen up the center and rear exhaust. You can drop the rear end of the overdrive down. I mean, how far is it going to come down? That far, but at least you're not working blindly up inside the tunnel. Just drop the cross member, but you don't want to drop the cross member without dropping the exhaust, because you're gonna end up bending the exhaust. So other than that, if I ever done it, I suppose, and you just get in there with some long, real strong pry bars and be mean about it.
That's what I was tolerating, and I had it down, and I was trying to take it out, and I said, I'll tolerate the little bit of a drip than try to rip it out. So I'll just wait until the whole thing fails, then I'll go ahead and redo it. Thanks a lot, John.
Okay, good luck. Good luck. Let's see, we got Mr. Cagg here, who's already asked us about the washer. And Judd asks about the same kind of thing that Jim Holliday did. What's recommended for downshifting from fourth overdrive to third gear? And you just do it. You just do it, and the car sort of jerks a bit. This is like a question like if your car diesels and you haven't gotten the anti-run-on circuit on it, 73 through 80, which stops the car dead, just like that when it's operating. It's a great system. If the car starts to diesel, it's a bump, the engine's jumping back and forth, I clutch my MGA to a stop. Ooh, isn't that horrible on the clutch? Yeah, but it seems worse on everything else to have it jumping around in there. So if it's really harsh coming out of overdrive down into something else, sure, use the foot clutch.
So the only thing is if I'm running at 65 or 70 miles an hour in overdrive and I need to be in third gear pretty soon, if I switch it out of overdrive, I'm going to all of a sudden be doing 4,500, 5,000 RPM. And I don't know if the motor probably doesn't care, but I don't know. If the motor doesn't care, I don't care.
Any slipping that you get on this cone clutch is going to wear it out sooner than not. So better to have slipping on the main clutch between the engine and gearbox.
Okay.
Than on the cone clutch. Okay, so Mike Palin, you probably already asked this. 65B, yes, we talked about that. And Doug McLaren, here we go. Doug, you can unmute yourself if you're on. Do you have a YouTube video on how to install an MGB head? Rocker gear, studs, torque the valves, et cetera, when it's all done. That would be, that would take a while. That'd be a 20-minute video. So I don't think I do, but the first thing when you're putting the head back on the cylinder block, MGA or MGBT type for that matter, is chamfer the underside of the holes at each of the studs. That's really important. So that gasket has got someplace to move into when you start to compress it. When you take the head gasket, of course it isn't this thick. I'm being generous here. It's really, I mean, was an 1/8 of an inch thick. But when you tighten that head down to 55 pounds and compress it, it's going to get thinner, right? Well, if it's going to get thinner, it's going to get bigger. It's going to expand. So you want some place for that expansion. You want to account for that expansion. That's why you chamfer the underside of the head where the studs go through, especially on the center stud on the right-hand side on the MGA and B series engine, MGBs and MGAs. That's why the heads crack externally, because the gasket bunches up at that center stud, and when you torque the head, you're bending the outside of the head, not that dramatically, of course, but you're bending it just a little bit. So chamfer it, and I use oil on the studs when I'm putting the head nuts on, and you start to run the thing down. At 5 pounds, usually 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, round and round and round that spiral that if you open up your workshop manual and look at what the torque sequence is, it's just a spiral starting from the middle, so that you're pushing the whatever bubbles there are or lumps in the gasket, you're pushing them towards the outside.
Right.
But no, to come down to it, no, I don't. In my video guy, Max, is all keen on doing a bunch of videos, but I just put that on my daughter's car. I don't know when I'm going to put another head on. But anyway, I don't.
The that hold the rocker gear on, there's long studs, there's long studs and short studs. I'm short one short stud, but I have an extra long stud. It will fit under the rocker gear, and there's enough thread that I can still torque the bolts down. Is it a problem if I use one long with the shorts?
No, although to make it look good, I'd spin a die or a thread chaser on that 5/16 24 thread on top of it and cut it off grind a little flank on it and then spin the die off so that it looks a little closer to what's supposed to be there. I can't imagine what it would interfere with. Probably nothing, but I'd make it a little shorter. I would.
I don't have a see-through rocker cover, so it'll be okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's see. Harold Nesbitt allows that his Ford F-150 has a Mazda 5-speed overdrive. So, okay, from John, it says, my gearbox gets hot in the summertime. So hot you can't touch the metal part of the shifter. Any ideas? So anytime you got motion, you're gonna induce heat. Anytime there's a leak around the gear lever, a tiny pinhole leak, all that hot air from the radiator and the engine is looking for an escape, and it's going to come out, up and out. I had a tiny little hole in my gear shift boot on my MGA for a couple of years, and that thing got so hot just because of the hot air that was buzzing by it all the time. So I tell you, first of all, to look for that kind of problem. If it's actually the gearbox that's getting hot, there are people who claim that it's the other kind of oil, not red line. It's not red line. Pardon?
Emily?
Hams oil?
No, I've heard people just, but they're usually
oil
to sell it to you, say that AMS oil is just the nuts. But there are oils that may not allow so much heat to be created. I don't know. I've always just used 2050 in those boxes, always. So my guess is that John, are you still on here? Can you unmute yourself? No, John, yet. So either we're having trouble unmuting or something. But anyway, it shouldn't get that hot unless there's a hole in the gear shift boot, and it doesn't have to be a big hole at all, which is, I mean, when you're dealing with heat, right? And you're trying to keep heat out of the cockpit of the car. The 3 steps are convection, conduction, and radiation. So convection is a hole in the firewall, and you can put R10,000 insulation all over your firewall, but if you've got a pinhole leak, game's up. A lot of heat's going to come through that pinhole. So anyway, those are just, I don't have a real explanation on why the gearbox itself might be getting hot. And then I just see that it's a 73B with overdrive. But okay, so from Greg Fast, he says he doesn't understand your comment about running the car on jack stands. Can I elaborate? Yes. The rear axle, it has the differential and pinion wheels in them, the spider gears they're called, so that one wheel can turn faster than the other when you're going around a corner. When the car's up and not under load, then the rear wheels can move back and forth a lot, and they're spur gears. It just without a load back there, the wheels can dance around, and you can break. I've seen it happen. You can break those spur gears, or cause them to weld themselves against the carrier back there. So, just isn't a good idea to run. I mean, if it's idling, you got the car idling, and one wheel very slowly is turning, that's okay. But not 60 miles an hour on jack stands. No, that just isn't, that's not a good idea. I don't know if I made that any clearer, Greg, or not. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody again just for a minute, and then if anyone wants to unmute themselves. Doug Miller says, what's the cost of adding an overdrive to a 1980 MGB? Well, if I still have my shop and I was going to take your engine and gearbox out for a clutch, at least $1,500 to get the engine and gearbox out and change the clutch and change some mounts and do the stuff. So there's $1,500. Then we got an overdrive and let's say that we buy a used one and we take the risk, you take the risk of it being good and it's not. So you decide, why don't you rebuild it? Well, then we got maybe $2,000 between buying the gearbox and going through it. So now we're up to $3,500. So we'll just keep rounding by 500s, $4,000. So that's just, I mean, that's just, you can find a good used overdrive for, I don't know, $750. You can put it in the car. It might work right at the get-go. You don't have to change the clutch. Why would you take the engine out and not change the clutch? But, so, I mean, you can get out of it for less. But I just off the top of my head and talking about it, I'd say about $4,000. Simon Dix is a firm believer here. He said the single best upgrade you can do on an MGB is to add an overdrive. So, and the single best upgrade you can do to an MGA is put a front anti-sway bar on it. Oh my gosh, it handles so differently. That's
Yay, yay, yay.
We got Barney weighing in there. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So Eric Gebhard weighs in and says, I've got overdrive in my B and I love it. And Mr. Cagby, we've already covered your question about the funny noise in there. And Judd says overdrive is great for driving up twisty mountain roads. It is. I put the car in third and just switch between third and third overdrive as needed. The third overdrive is just fourth gear. I mean, it's, oh yeah, I know it's ever so slightly different, but basically when you're looking at a gearbox, you're going to put in first gear, you put one turn in the front of the gearbox, you get a quarter turn out the back. In second gear, you put one turn into the gearbox, you get 2 quarter turns out the back. I'm going to keep going here. In third gear, you put one turn in the front of the gearbox, you get 3/4 of a turn out the back. In fourth gear, you put one turn in, you get 4/4 out. And in overdrive, you put one turn in, you get 5/4 out. I mean, that's just approximately the ratios. And third overdrive is approximately fourth. So, okay. So Judd says he wishes that he had it in his MGA, but you can buy one of those 5 speeds. But then you can't just toggle a lever. So, Simon Dix also weighs in with Skip Vandermolen here and asks, what oil do you have in the MGC overdrive, which causes it to stick on? But if you haven't changed the oil since we serviced it, Skip, you got 2050 in there. So, unless you've changed it. Okay. Here we go, Rodolfo from Monterrey, Mexico. So you can unmute yourself if you're still on, Rodolfo. And he's calling for a vote, or opinion at least. I can't get away from original. Is still valid, and if I changed the original
color
racing green to Old English white. So anyway, it's your car.
Yeah, but there is one thing that is, remember that MG wasn't sold here in Mexico. It was made sometimes around the 40s, from 46, 47 more or less, and it stopped making the cars here in Mexico, and then it disappeared. So there are not many Mexican MGs, and the market is completely different. So I guess I'm answering my question already after some comments that some guys wrote me directly. Thank you very much. Yes, I know it's a car, but it's a different market. So I'm quite ashamed, I guess, because I decided to change the color, and I am regretting that already. But anyway, I'm still enjoying the car and I love it. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, some people have the attitude that if the car came out of the factory Tyra-like green, God intended it was supposed to be Tyra-Light green for the rest of its life. But if the MGA came out as Alamo beige, you can make a case for painting it Old English white or red or purple. That's a particularly unusual color. You know, I used to be pretty keen on having the car be an original color, but it's your car. Please yourself. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, here we go. Here we got Tom Mick somebody. You know, here I am, and I'm not the one who can. Tom Mick somebody. If you're still on, it's got a 79 midget. I have a leaking wheel cylinder on my 79 midget. The replacement wheel cylinder has an E-clip in place of the original C-clip and spacer. Is the E-clip preferable? No. I would use the original. I would use that original snap ring. You need snap ring pliers to open it up. It's so much easier to fit. And those E-rings, the E-rings are a terror to fit anyway, but the quality of the spring steel that the new E-clips are made out of, sometimes you go to put it on, it just bends. Sometimes you cannot get it into place. And the midget's just a little tighter in there. So I'd use the original eared blank circlip. I would use the original circlip and circlip pliers, and underneath that, usually underneath that, it's another washer so that the cylinder doesn't rattle.
Can I reuse, or should I put a new C-clip on?
You can reuse it.
Reuse it?
It's not a wearing part. I don't think it gets stressed much at all. So you can reuse that old eared circlip, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm gonna give it a shot this weekend. Thank you.
So when you're doing brakes on a midget, any midget, you can make a case for taking the rear hubs off the car, take the half shafts out, and the rear hubs off. It's a hex nut. It's a lot less complicated than taking an octagon nut off an MGA or a banjo MGA diff or a banjo MGB diff. And it's an odd 1 7/8 maybe. It's a big nut back there, and they are handed. They tighten in the direction of wheel rotation, so the left-hand side of the car has a left-hand thread. Don't get that confused. But if you take that off and use a slide hammer, tonk, and pull the hubs off, then you can change the seals so that the seals and the hubs aren't going to let any more differential oil on the brakes. And with that hub out of place, doing the brakes is like just heaven compared to having that hub in place and having to fight all that, get those springs and all that stuff around it. So just to comment on doing that.
All right, will do. Thank you.
Tom, where are you from?
Royal Oak, Michigan.
Oh, all right. Okay, right down the road.
I'm hoping the weather warms up so I can actually work in the garage.
You know, as I said this morning, when the guy showed up with the 2 yards of topsoil, it's like and the snow is swirling as he's dumping it. It's like, when spring gonna, but there won't be a spring, right? All of a sudden, it's gonna be 80 degrees and we'll all look back and say, well, geez, at least I could put a sweater on when it was. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Hey, you're very welcome. All right, from John to everyone, an old MG mechanic told me to put back the oil type that was in there. In other words, don't change the type of oil. Oh, I don't know. Just because it's been running with makeup and oil, Pennzoil 2050 for 30 years doesn't mean you got to put Pennzoil back in there. I don't think that that's important. I don't think so. Here we go, Bill Weekly. He says, I've got a 69 MGC with overdrive, and I added a relay that releases the overdrive every time the gear lever leaves the 3rd, 4th gate. The relays detailed in Rick Astley's MG Electrical Systems book. It's wonderful not to have the overdrive re-engage in the next shift in the third. So that is a problem with overdrive, that you put the overdrive switch on and you come out of overdrive, you're cruising along in fourth, down to third, you really don't notice it. Well, you do if you're really in tune with the car, but you put it in third, and then maybe you put it in second, you come to a stop, you wait, put it in first gear and take off, and you're accelerating up through it, and you hit third, and you're in third gear for about 2 seconds, and then you feel the car go, ooh, because you're still in overdrive. So immediately, your right hand goes up, flicks the switch off, and then the car shakes as you come out of overdrive. So Bill Weekley has a reference here to Rick Astley's book on MG Electrical Systems. We're putting this relay in place so that once you take it out of gear, that it won't re-engage. So I haven't seen that, but Rick Astley's book is out there, so great. And Paul Evans adds Walter. Paul, who's Walter? So I don't know what that is in reference. Maybe we're talking about something earlier. So Greg Estep says, I wonder if the whine in that D-type overdrive is caused by the planet gears being out of phase with the annulus. Maybe, although that washer was kind of a giveaway. So when you're putting the overdrive back together, you can't see it because I haven't got it marked, but there's a dot. You can see it's a light, just a lighter, I've cleaned it, but there's a dot, and each gear has that dot. And when you reassemble it, the workshop manual is quite emphatic to have all those dots laid out on 120 degrees. Not one tooth off, but in phase. So maybe, Greg, I don't know. So from Crystal Johnson in Texas, what's the difference between a blue label and a black label? So I already talked about that. She says, I'm looking for an overdrive unit for my 70 MGB, so I'm confused on which is the type to find. So on the 70 MGB, you can find either kind, a side fill or a top fill. It makes no difference. If you got it apart before you install it, you can change and put in the correct overdrive speedo gears. If you don't want to do that, you can find a 1000 speedo from a 74.5 through 76 and change the bezel on the front of the speedo so that the speedometer looks correct on your dash. Only in 68 through 70, they had a curved bezel and then they went to an angled bezel on the thing. So you should have a black label top fill driving your speedo at 1280 turns per mile. That's what you should have. Top fill, black label with the white gears in it. But if all you can find, or if you want side fill, which is just heaven, then you can either change the gears in the overdrive during the rebuild or buy a different speedo so that the speedo is driven correctly. Somebody else can tell you how to change the odometer. Probably illegal for me to tell you. I've never, go figure, I've never done that, but I know guys who have, and I think it's pretty easy.
Oh,
So-
can I just take the speedometer and have them just recalibrate it to match?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But if you send it to MoMA, I just talked to him this morning in Albuquerque, he'll do that, or you send it to Neisinger in Mamaroneck, New York, or you send it to, Morris at West Valley Instruments. Yes, they can take it from a 1280 to 1000 real easy. You keep the original speedo, you keep the original mileage. Yes.
Well, the only reason why I asked that is I got my hands on a new old stock speedo for the 70. It's the exact Speedo that belongs in there, but new old stock.
Okay. Okay, well, that's cool. So it's starting off at 0 then.
Yep, 0.
Hey, okay. So anyway, so they could take that and fiddle with that one too. So however you want to accomplish this, there's
Okay.
a lot of ways. All right, from John to everyone, any tips to fill the gearbox with oil? Well, this obviously is not the side fill, which I've just been suggesting is what you want. So, you know, you can get a funnel with a flexible spout, or you can get a funnel and put a piece of hose on it and take that down. But if you just get a funnel with a hose, at some point in the fill sequence, the funnel is going to separate from the hose, and then you're going to get a certain amount of oil on the passenger footwell. Take the passenger carpeting up, put a bunch of rags in there just to catch the oil that does spill. But that funnel with the snake in it, that's pretty handy. The warmer the oil is when it goes in, the quicker it's going to go in there. If it's a top fill, obviously there's 68 through 74. The dipstick has got 2 O-rings on it. You don't need 2, you only need 1. So take one of those O-rings off. Now it'll go in and out of there a lot more easily. And you can either, I haven't got my handy dandy gearbox dipstick pull tool that was made for me by Tucker Madawick in Bloomington, Indiana on his lathe. It's this real fancy little tool. You can make one out of an old coat hanger too, but you need some sort of hook on it. It's just a real problem. Getting that gearbox out, the dipstick out, getting it back in, filling it with oil. So no handy things except that snake on there. So anyway, hope that helps, John.
Can I add something, John?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one of those little pump things that screws into the top of an oil bottle. And with that, I can either side fill or top fill. I use it, and it's very handy.
Absolutely. Alan, thank you very kindly. I just had a guy loan me one. Why was I using it? Because I was filling the differential. And he said, I got this thing that screws right on the top of the oil. And, you know, you got to push it 2,000 times to get that volume of oil in there. But
yeah,
you don't leak very much. So thank you. Thank you, Alan. So Simon Dix has included a washer in the chat section that says this is an example of the infamous thrust washer on the blue label. And again, let me remind you that I do have very thick washers that will replace that broken one. But of course, you got to have the gearbox apart because you got to put it on the front of the sun gear. But I do have very thick ones that won't break. So here we go. From iPhone, my 74B has a black label OD. I had it apart at University Motors rebuild class, but I didn't replace the sliding member. My MGB now has about 190,000 miles on the clock and it's still working okay. But must have to do with the University Motors rebuild class. That clutch, you know, I don't know what makes some of those clutches go bad. I've seen them come completely separate. This one is glued in place. This one's glued. Some of them the earlier ones are just riveted. I've seen them come loose. I've seen them break up. Is that because of the oil? Is that because of the use or abuse? I don't know. But once it's shot, then you've got to buy a new one or order one from Overdrive Repair Services in Sheffield, England. They will sell you a sliding member and then you're obligated to send your old one back so they can reline it for the next person. Overdrive Repair Services, Sheffield, England. You can also buy it right out of Moss or Ingle or anybody else today. Paul Evans, do I recommend an oil cooler for a 58 Magnet? First of all, you need they don't call it a sump shield. What do they call it for colonial conditions? There's a steel plate that they have that a Magnet has the sump hanging right out in front, waiting for a stone, a stump, a cat, something or other in the road to perforate it. And there's a shield. Oh my gosh, I don't have that in front of me. Alan, what was that called? It's an Alan Batchelder.
I can't remember the name of that shield. All I can do is attest for the fact that it's needed.
Yeah. Who weighed in there, Barney? Are you still around?
That's a cow catcher.
Yeah.
Skid plate.
Yeah, sure, Dean, you're right. That's what it is. But it's got this perfectly British name, and it came through in the confidential service memorandums. I'd show you, but they're confidential. And it's to be used in colonial conditions. It's so great. It's so British. Anyway, going back to the oil cooler on the Magnet, only if it's an arduous use. Only if, like Barney, you're pulling a trailer or you're doing a lot of hill climbing or something. But no, I don't think it's necessary. Speaking of magnets, there's a movie about Margaret Thatcher. Who's it star? Somebody will weigh in here. Anyway, she wins the by-election, and she jumps in her Magnet to drive to the Houses of Parliament later in the film, when she's either at the point of being prime minister or just about there. She's in a car park and putting her briefcase in the back of a Harvest Gold MGB GT. So anyway, that's just Magnet stuff. No, I don't think you need one from a Magnet. But Alan Batchelder's on here, so Paul Evans, you must be in touch with Alan. If you're not, find him on. How do we find you, Alan? Is there a Facebook page or something for Magnets?
There is a Facebook page for Magnets, though it's best if he just emails me waywardmgs@comcast.net, and we get on. Then we get him involved in the Z Magnet group of North America, and you get all kinds of answers there. It's a great group. I also want to mention my 58 Magnet. I do not have an oil cooler. I'm running an 18 GB engine, and I've run it now about 11 years, and it's fine.
Wonderful. Just a comment. If you end up having to change engines in your MGA or your MGB, you're not concerned about originality, go for that late model 18V engine, it's a 72 onwards. That is just, oh my gosh. And even later on, by the time you get to the 18V 797s, I think, everything is so lightweight in them. They're great engines. They only have 3 rings on the piston. They got the 2A13 lifters out of a midget. So the push rods are a little longer, but therefore they only have to have one spring on the valve on the head to hold the lifter on the cam. They got a single chain. They're just great. They're great, and you can make an 18V engine fit an MGA, changing the backing plate and some stuff like that. So it's all possible. But those late model engines are really nice. So because that 18 GB engine that Alan just talked about, I think it's got 5 rings on it, 3 compression and 2 oils. It's like, even when you assemble it and you grab a hold of the rod, you really have to push to overcome the friction on the inside of the cylinder bore with all those rings. Anyway.
Oh, wait a minute. I do got a question though.
Yeah.
Right? If I go, I have 2 engines. I got an 18 GB, right? Or no, an 18 GK, right? And an 18V. But if I want to stick with originality, can I take all the smog and emission stuff and move it over to the 18V so it looks original?
Sure, all you gotta do is change the engine ID plate. There are people who will look at it and go, oh, you cheated. But I wouldn't be able to tell. So, you know, I mean, but there are people who would, you know, but I mean, the engine block is just, it's so much nicer engine. I don't understand though, on the late model cars, the counterweights weigh half as much as the car on the crank. I don't get it. If you want to spin that engine up fast, don't you want smaller counterweights? And aren't the counterweights there to balance the rod and piston? And if the rod and piston are lighter, why are the counterweights heavier? So there's some stuff I still don't understand. A lot of stuff I don't understand even at my age.
But I can go ahead and move the air pump, the air rack,
yes,
the Bolt valve, just move them right on over.
Sure.
And just.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another comment about changing the label. My 18GB has a label on it that somehow reads, I think 15G. I can't remember the rest of it. And the reason why is because back in the late 50s, particularly in California, they were titling these cars by the engine number. And so that's what I had to do.
It was easier to do that than convince someone that the VIN was really the VIN. Yeah. There's some other stuff with titles too. Sometimes the cars weren't, the year of the car reflects the date it was sold. So if you had a TF, for instance, it sat around in a dealer until 56, it turns out to be a 56 TF. Which, well, that can't be. Well, it's just the title. It's just the paperwork that surrounds it. Speaking of Mexican assembled T-types, which Rodolfo hazarded upon a little bit earlier, we had a customer with a TD that had a TF wiper assembly on it because that was the way it was assembled in Mexico. So anyway. Okay, Brad Worthington, what should the torque setting be on the overdrive annulus assembly? And after torquing to spec, should the annulus spin freely? So let's say that we're building up the rear housing. So there's two bearings that go on here. There's a front bearing and a rear bearing. The speedo drive goes in between, and you tighten this nut up, I don't know, 90, I mean, tight. I've never measured it, never torqued it. I just put the rattle gun on it and spun it until I thought that it would never, ever come off. Before you do that, see the splines here. So I don't think I've ever seen one weep oil. But the other end of the spline is here. And is there a chance that oil can come out, can go through there and come out the back end and oil the front of the drive shaft? I suppose. I always run a bead of gasket goo underneath the flat washer that goes underneath that nut. The earlier ones were pinned, castle nuts. The later ones had aero lock nuts on them. That you just use a hammer and you can hit the nut and it distorts the flange on it and then you can reuse it. So I've never concerned myself with how tight that should be, only getting it really tight. And yes, when it's tight. So if it's not tight, because why would you ask that? If it's not tight, when it's all assembled up, you take your brass hammer, and you hold the case and you give this thing a really hard crack forward, and maybe go down inside here, go right down inside here with a drift, and give it another crack. Sometimes the bearings aren't totally seated in the aluminum housing, and so the balls are resisting turning. But by cracking it, it'll set them into place. Sounds crude, but it works.
That's great.
Okay, do you feel that thread lock can replace lock washers within the overdrive on the spring-loaded bearing assembly? The thread locker, you're talking about these nuts here?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, the lock washers, you know, when you bend them over, they've been bent over so many times that I'm afraid I'm going to lose them in there.
Can you buy new ones? And then there's two nuts on here right now. This is an arrow lock. Can you see it, that it's slit? It's slit just at the very top. I don't know if you can see that, but that's an AERO. It's a type of lock nut. All kinds of lock nuts. You can get nylocks, but nylocks are too tall. So maybe you can find these nuts, but red Loctite, torqued up to, I don't know, 20, 25 pounds on a 1/4 inch shank, that ain't gonna come off, you know. But I'd never do that. I'd always use a lock washer or the lock tab. You can make a lock tab, You know, you've got some old lock tabs left over from building your engine. Drill a hole through it and cut the piece and make a lock tab. Not satisfied with that? Use a castle nut, drill it, pin it. So anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, here we go from Arnold. Norm Ewing stayed with us during the MG 94 in the DC area. So yeah, I'm sorry that Norm isn't on tonight. So David Massey, what is the name or number of the adhesive you always promote? Gasket glue, is that what we're talking about, David? If so.
No, I'm talking about when we did the tops, contact cement just doesn't cut it.
Oh, okay.
It's an 8808 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
3M 08088, unless you're really good. And then it's 08090.
Okay.
The 08090 is better, but you got to be pretty sure what you're doing, because if you follow the instructions and spray both surfaces and let it get tacky and put it together after 15 seconds or so, it's not going to be possible to pull it apart. So 088 gives you some leeway there. So,
all right.
And it's just all yeller glue. You know, you can buy that stuff in a brush too, but it's really hard to get a nice even application. So.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Okay, Bill Cadden, this goes back to pulling the rear seal out of the back of the overdrive. And Bill Cadden says, you try using packing puller. This is over in the chat section, packing puller. He weighed in at 819. Looks like a corkscrew on a flexible shaft. I think that must be what he's talking about here. Bill Baumer, I'm currently installing, we got a lot. Hey, I just hazarded upon overdrives and got a lot of questions tonight about overdrives. I'm currently installing an overdrive transmission on a 74.5 BGT. The previous non-overdrive transmission clutch was working fine. The clutch, I had the bearing type throwout. It seems smooth. Would you advise reusing it, I think, or getting the original carbon release bearing? It was working fine. About a year ago, there were some problems with carbon release bearings breaking up. I mean, within 2 miles or 200 miles of installation. So frustrating because you got to take the whole friggin' thing back out, you know, to change it. So if the bearing type, some kind of roller release bearings working okay, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks, because I don't know how many miles are on it, but it was working fine, and it's got quite a few miles, I think.
Okay,
So I'll probably stick with it.
okay.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. So Steve Olson weighs in and says, I added a Spitfire overdrive to my Midget 1500 years ago. I added a Spitfire overdrive. Really, it's a GT6 overdrive, isn't it? To my Midget 1500 years ago, and it was the best upgrade ever. So even on a Midget 1500, you can put an overdrive on it from a TR. You can't do that on an A series box. You can buy 5-speed, absolutely. So Barry's checking out for the night. And then here Steve Olson's weighed in about that Midget 1500 on the brake clips. He said, I grind a slight relief on the inside corner of those brake cylinder stir clips to make them much easier to go on. So yes, I should have mentioned that, but I didn't remember. So, and Simon Dix has weighed in over here on the chat section for the relay, and that comes up on their St. Louis MG Club site. Maybe it's something from the Rick Astley book, maybe not, but about that relay and the problem that you have of getting overdrive sort of automatically re-engaged because you've forgotten that it was on. So from Paul to everybody, from everyone's experience, how common is the thrust washer failure on a side fill overdrive box? Is there any way to check, visually check, without disassembly, maybe with a bore camera? No. The only way you can find that is if it's lying in the filter, and if someone's already removed the filter and taken that out, you wouldn't know. There's excessive float on this because that thrust washer isn't there, but how would you know that it was floating? You can't see up inside there because that's in the back half of the overdrive assembly. I haven't heard of anyone. I mean, and the problem is that this then abuts aluminum, and steel against aluminum, and it's going to wear the aluminum away. But I can't remember anybody ever saying, "Oh my gosh, my overdrive broke in half," and it turned out it was because that thrust washer was gone. It's 9:08. Let me make another pitch for my PayPal button on my website. Thank you very much. I apologize for not thanking the people who have contributed in the past 6 weeks, but I will catch you the next time around because I'm embarrassed that I haven't got your names up tonight. I usually do that. But if you go there, it's wonderfully appreciated, let me tell you. John Burrows, I had a rebuilt overdrive fitted and immediately the one-way clutch at the back failed. Odd. My mechanic says he always replaces this part when he rebuilds them. I never have. The rebuilt one had not been replaced. Also, using a longer speedo cable to avoid the angle drive. So, two things here from John Burrows. One is that the one-way clutch, the Sprague clutch, which fits down inside here. So that's the one-way clutch, so that the car doesn't wear out the facing, which goes up against the annulus in direct drive. But I've never changed. That's not true. I changed one once, because it all those warnings: do not engage overdrive if your car, do not reverse if your car is in overdrive. Well, I saw one which that had happened to. In this piece in here, which is not part of the annulus, this has been pressed in. This is a bearing race in here, and that had cracked because the Sprague clutch was trying to open up. So how do you get that out of there? I went to the backside and drilled 2 small holes back here and took an 1/8 inch punch and worked back and forth and drove that out of there. It's the only time I ever changed one.
Now, this one came from a reputable supplier in California.
Okay, I've never seen one. I've seen them installed backwards.
I don't know, but this was Joe up at JD.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And John also suggests using that longer speedo cable. Use that longer speedo cable anyway, even if you don't have overdrive, and get rid of that stupid 90-degree drive on the side of the gearbox that fails. It's the overdrive speedo cable is a 2738-1830. That's the Smith's number on it. 1.830 meters long, and it's just long enough that you can loop it underneath. You always just use the largest radiuses you can, so the inside of the speedo cable doesn't chafe against the outer sheath. But yeah, we always did that at the shop. Got rid of those 90-degree drive things. And oh my gosh, 68 through 71, they bring the speedo cable in above the passenger's knees. American spec, left-hand drive. Bring that all the way across underneath into another 90-degree on the back of the speedo. This is insanity. So you get rid of all that junk and just bring the speedo cable in directly through the firewall, which there's a hole right there in front of the speedo in the firewall. It probably holds the washer hose, but you can,
No, that's what we did. And I mean, the Toronto Club, and we've had other people have said, get rid of that angle drive.
Yep.
Done the same way.
Okay. Okay, so we got MGB Man's iPhone, and he says, I'm fitting an overdrive gearbox to my 74B. Where is the wire to connect the overdrive harness under the car? So there are 3 essential wires, a green and a green with brown, which go on the reverse light switch. Easy schmeezy. Those go up to the junction of the main loom and the rear loom. You pull the green off the main loom, and the green with brown is in the rear loom. You connect to that so that when you're in reverse, the reverse lights come on. That's easy. In all the cars up through 76, there's a yellow wire, which is available at the junction of the main loom and the rear loom. At the rear of the right front inner fender, just to the rear of the fuse box. It's got a female Lucas connector on it, so it can't touch anything else. And that yellow wire comes from the switch on the column, the overdrive switch. All the cars have it. All the cars have the overdrive switch on the column, and all of them have that yellow wire in there, whether it's fitted with overdrive or not. So you go to that point, that yellow wire, and first of all, put a fuse between that yellow wire and the wire which goes from there down to the 3rd, 4th lockout switch, and the other side of the 3rd, 4th lockout switch goes to the solenoid. That's where MGB Man, if you got any questions about that, you can call me tomorrow. I'll talk you through it again, but you must, everyone, whether you're fitting it new or you've got an overdrive, this is 62 through 80. It's an unfused circuit. Dangerous. Only that if it chafes down at the gearbox, it burns up the whole wiring loop. So why do that? Put an inline fuse in the circuit, put about a 10 amp fuse in there. If it dead shorts, it'll pop the fuse. All right, from Dean, T-Series brake drums are getting scarce. Can they be relined? It's a good opportunity for someone geared up for that sort of thing to make them. So the drums, once they've been turned, course, the diameter keeps getting larger and larger and larger. Those drums are so massive. What you really want to do is put the spacer underneath the mask and adjuster so that it pushes the shoes out to match the drums. Putting something on the inside of a brake drum, creepy. I don't, it's, if you were to talk to your lawyer about product safety and so forth, he would say, don't do it. So, but you can get there by shimming out the mask and adjuster on A's or bug eyes or T-types so that you push the shoes farther out towards the drums.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I just got a message from somebody maybe 2 months ago. It says that Moss Motors finally got a different model of brake shoes for the MGA. So now you don't need the spacers behind the adjuster mask anymore.
Okay, so that's a thicker lining maybe or something.
No, the shoes are always a little bit too short from end to end. When you put brand new drums and brand new shoes, you crank the adjuster all the way up to the last click to make it work. And now they got new shoes that are the correct length.
Okay, good. So anyway, so that's the news from Moss, is that the shoes are longer, whether they're closer to the original or what, but they're ones that we all want. So, okay, Barney, thank you very much. So Peter Stein Hobel writes that Norm Ewing rivals John, meaning me, in his dedication and contribution to all things MG. He ran the MG Car Club in South Africa for many years and never let me forget finding me reading his MG Club magazine when visiting in South Africa. It was South African Airways. So anyway, that's Norm Ewing is the MG man from South Africa, but he's 80. So are some of us. I'm not yet, but anyway. So we are down to the end, I think, of my messages. So it's 9:18. We're done. I'm gonna make my final pitch for PayPal, and go on there, take a look at my website, look at some of those new YouTube videos. I know people have, because the numbers are increasing on there. Again, I'm going to be at the big meet in not Jersey Shore, Atlantic City, June 14th through 17th. I'm going to be in Altoona the weekend before Labor Day, and I'm going to be in Portland, Oregon on Labor Day. So if you can come out to those meets, find them online. We're still ramping up. There's still a lot of people. Oh, my mask. I didn't show you my mask. We're down to 89 people. But look, is this cool or what? So here's my mask. My daughter ordered some parts from the MG Owners Club in Swansea in England. And while she was there, they got MG underwear, they got MG socks, they got a wild supply of MG stuff, but they've got the MG mask, so you can go around now and be cool with your MG mask. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for being on tonight. We've still got 90 people on right now. It was just 89 a moment ago. Who would have come in the last couple of minutes? Maybe somebody got the time wrong. But if you got questions, you always call me. Always call me. That's just the easiest way. Let me tell you, I once a week I don't call somebody back. It's the best way to get in touch with me. If you do send an email, if you've sent one and you haven't got an answer, that I can't. I get the volume of my emails is so great. I just can't answer them all. I wish I could. If you need instant results, call me. So I'm gonna let everybody sign off tonight. Thank you very, very kindly for being on. You can unmute yourself if you wish to.
I want to thank you, John.
as always.
Thank you, John.
See you in
John,
Atlantic
it's a
City.
pleasure.
Goodbye, John.
Bob and Gloria.
Thank you, John.
Ruth,
Thank you, John.
John, thank you.
John, I
Thank
want
you,
to
John.
thank you for
John.
Alan.
Thanks so much.
helping me
Yeah,
out.
Alan,
Thank you,
thanks a
John.
lot. Ann and Jake Snyder, nice to see you. I just saw you come up.
Thanks,
And
John.
Bill Rosebeer. Yep, that's, oh my gosh. My
Hey, Ruthie, good seeing you.
heavy duty.
Bruce.
ticket. Bruce McMillan, that's good.
Yep.
Alan Batchelder, thank you.
Cheers,
So,
John.
Ann and Jake, I'm gonna be down in Crystal Lake, I don't know, sometime in the next 2 weeks, I think, with my daughter's car, but that's Crystal Lake. It's not where you are, so.
It's
but I'll
not
be-
far. Not far.
We'll see each other.
John, get the car fixed.
At the gas
Bruce.
station. Yep. So,
Hey, John, if you're coming over to Crystal Lake, I might want to see you. We're going up that direction this week.
okay.
Got
I'm-
got
About another week and a half, I think, so, yep,
I got an appointment in Davenport on Sunday, and the next couple of weeks I'll be in the Chicago area.
okay, all right.
John, don't forget about PayPal.
PayPal, yes, make sure you get PayPal. Dean Wheeler, nice to see you tonight. Think about your dad a lot, always. So Ron Nugent, nice to see you here. Vern Notstein, nice to see you on. So,
John, thanks for your help the other day on FaceTime with that 80 MGB. We got it on the road, got it
oh,
running.
yeah, sure.
And it's a high speed, a little sputter. I have to mess with the carburetor a little bit. We did so much to that car, but we didn't get the, this is a funny story. We didn't get the sending unit for the fuel gauge in. We had to go out to get it from Scott. But anyway, he took it out. He's driving around. He said he loved it. And I called him up and he said, I had to have it towed. So I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And so I said, David, go out to your car right now, open the hood. Tell me how much gas is in the fuel filter. He said, oh, there's none. I said, you ran out of gas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always something.
Yeah, so anyway, he's
Gentlemen,
happy.
ladies, I must make my escape. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
John. Bye, John.